Hello, everyone. I'm David Green. I'm the CEO of Earnest, and we are a fintech company focused on making higher education affordable and accessible for everyone. I'm excited to tell you more about what we do and why we do it. But before I get started, I just want to call out that one of our company values is passion for challenges, and I think the organizers must have heard that and found that out before asking me to do this talk on to all these people for 45 minutes straight with only a one-word prompt of community. I imagine they were backstage and just being like, let's community, let's see if we can make that interesting. So, challenge accepted. Today I'm going to talk about how community can really be a superpower in your career, in your company, and with your customers, and talk a little bit about how we build community at Earnest. Before I dive into these extremely interesting thoughts on community, is that me? I just want to say that we at Earnest are very excited to be participating in the Silicon Slopes Summit. Since opening our Salt Lake City co-headquarters in 2017, I've had the privilege of spending a lot of time in the area, and it's been wonderful to be a part of the growth and innovation that's taken place here. I'll say it's a little bit unclear whether you all are trying to send me a message by putting every flight that comes in from where I live in the Bay Area at the absolute last gate at the Salt Lake City airport, but for now I'm going to assume that's just a coincidence. Just a little bit about Earnest. Earnest was founded with a mission to democratize access to high-quality financial services, and we found success early on by helping college graduates get better interest rates through refinancing their student loans. Over the first few years, we launched other financial products to serve our customer base, but at some point, it became clear that that wasn't really where we felt we could have the most impact. We kept hearing from students and parents of students that they wanted and needed to pay off their student loans so that they could move on with their lives. And while our refinancing product was and still is the best way for them to pay off their debts faster, there was only so much we could do for them by the time they came to us with $50,000 or $100,000 in student loan debt. And we also knew that, from performing various market analyses, that kind of best case scenario with refinancing, we could only help about 25% of people with student loans. Based on these challenges, we decided that our biggest opportunity for impact was helping make higher education affordable and accessible. And we articulated a vision that we believe in a world where paying for your education takes less time than earning your degree. And that's what we've been working on the past few years. 2 weeks ago, Earnest celebrated its 9th anniversary, and we've certainly recognized some highlights over the years. As of January of 2022, we became the nation's largest refinancer of student loans, saving our customers billions of dollars. We helped this year 15% of all college-bound high school seniors access scholarships and financial aid through tools in our Going Merry platform, which is a free scholarship and financial aid platform we acquired last year. And we've supported tens of thousands of students in their higher education journey with loans they can understand, of which 80% of them are minimizing the cost of their education by making some sort of payment while they're in school. And I think if somebody had shared those accomplishments with me the day I started at Earnest, I would like to think I'd feel like we had come close to achieving our mission. But if you ever meet a member of my team, and some of them are here today, I'm sure they'll be eager to tell you that celebrating success goes into the opportunities for improvement section of my performance review. I'm more in the, okay, great, what's next camp. And I mentioned passion for challenges earlier, but another of our company values is better, and I take that pretty literally. It's my daily quest to make sure we are improving every day, having more impact every day and helping students make better financial decisions every day. And this idea of helping students make better decisions is something that I think about all the time. I remember when I was going to business school and it was time for me to take out loans, and I literally had no clue what to do. And so like most people, I just opened up Google and I typed in student loans, and I think like most people, I left not understanding what I was supposed to do. I didn't know if I should just be looking for low interest rates or what other considerations were out there, if it was federal loans, if it was private loans. And ultimately, I landed on what I would refer to as the HOPE strategy, which is probably similar to what many people are doing today when financing their education. You know, I hope I was taking out the right kind of loan, and I hope that I could pay them back at some point in the future. And I think about that a lot today because, you know, if I, as an incoming student at one of the a premier finance-focused business school, couldn't figure this out, what chance do 18-year-olds have to make good decisions about financing their education? And so that's why, you know, my North Star is helping everyone who doesn't have this fancy MBA figure out how to get the education they want and the education they deserve without literally mortgaging their future. We clearly also need to help the MBA students. And so, what was the topic? Community. I'm clearly crushing it on that challenge so far. But let's turn to community. I'm actually very excited to talk about it today. As I thought more about this topic, you know, community has really been instrumental to my success, to the success of Earnest, and to the success of our customers. So let's dive in. I think I would bet that I had a very different path to CEO than many of the others on this stage and other stages today, and probably many of the other CEOs out there. You know, I wasn't a co-founder at Earnest. I wasn't an external CEO hire. I wasn't even hired to the executive team originally. I don't even think we had titles when I started. My title was just risk at Earnest, and that wasn't even clear if that was a title or if they were just labeling me as a risk by bringing me in. But you know, in 6 years, I went from underwriting every loan to becoming the CEO. So you know, pretty typical trajectory there. And given this very non-traditional path to CEO, I often get asked, you know, what advice would I give to others in their career? And the short answer is, do not ask me for advice, because it will start with, have you tried underwriting loans? That works really well. But you know, there are a lot of good possible responses there. You know, act like an owner, be a problem solver, you need to have grit. And while all of those are true, I think one that often gets missed is the importance of finding the community where you fit. And this, more than any of those other things, helped me get to where I am today. You know, how many people out there have had a job that they have truly loved? And you know, if you haven't, maybe think back to the times when you've been, you know, you're most fulfilled or most happiest at work. You know, hopefully you've had at least one of those positive experiences, and you know what that environment feels like. If you're sitting next to your boss right now, I apologize for asking this question. But I would be willing to bet that, you know, if I asked you what made that job so special or great, most of your answers would involve some version of, it was the people that I worked with at the time that made it worthwhile. You know, it's about the people, and it's about the community. And if I had to boil down the success I've had at Earnest to one thing, you know, it's really that I love coming to work every day. In my first year, I probably worked 100 hours a week for the entire year. And while I do not want to do that today, and I don't think I could, and I wouldn't ask our employees to do that, I look back on that time quite fondly. I really enjoyed it. And I think if you love your job, it's likely that you're going to do great work there. So, you know, that's the first piece of advice, just love your job. And you're probably like, okay, cool, I'll just find this magical job that I love. Thanks for that great insight. Well, you know, I do have a tip for you. You know, the biggest contributor to me loving my job has been the community. It's the people I get to work with day in and day out. It's knowing that even on my worst days, I get to come to work and be around people that challenge me and that I genuinely like. And in order to tell you how to find community, I'm going to start with a little personal history lesson about how I've done things differently and done things my own way. And I'm going to try to make it quick, but bear with me while I take us kind of way back here. I think if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see I attended, it's called Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C. It's a very rigorous, prestigious high school. And what you will not see on LinkedIn is that I was, one of, I don't know, maybe tied for the worst student in the school. I recently was home and found a stash of report cards that I had pulled out of the mail so that my parents, I made an entire year without my parents giving me any grief about my bad grades. I also found this stack of what they called interim notes, and interim notes is what they would send home when they were like, we cannot wait till the report card comes out to talk to this guy's parents because it is that bad. And my favorite of these interim notes contained the line, David lacks all the qualities of a student. I was doing great. Somehow I did eventually graduate high school, and on my LinkedIn, you'll also see that I got my undergraduate degree from George Washington University, and what you won't see is that I actually started at the University of Colorado. And I mainly chose the University of Colorado because it was consistently ranked as a top 5 university for partying. And unfortunately, I was still lacking all of those qualities of a student. I remember after my first semester, I was sitting around with, my best friend at the time and my roommate, and we were talking about the grades we had received, and it felt a little bit like that scene from Animal House where the dean is reading out all the grades, and somebody gets a 0.0. I had a 1.4, and my best friend had a 0.9, and my roommate had a 0.8, and so we were clearly all destined for greatness. And unsurprisingly, I only lasted 2 semesters at Colorado before dropping out. So after that, my parents decided, we've wasted a lot of money on this education, and they decided to ship me off to Minnesota to spend 4 months in a rehab because they were convinced that a big part of this was caused by drugs and alcohol. And I still cannot figure out why they thought that. And while I vehemently disagreed at the time, I think upon further reflection, they likely had a good point. So I spent the next couple of years working, learning how to be an adult, taking a few classes, learning how to be a student, going to AA, and kind of generally pulling my life together. I ended up returning to the University of Colorado and found out that college is apparently way easier if you go to class and do the homework. And I transferred to George Washington and got my degree in economics and landed a job with Accenture. And after 3 years of working at Accenture inside of an old supply closet at the Department of Justice, that's where they keep the consultants, I knew I wanted to do something different, but I had no clue what that was going to be, and I did what many people in that situation do. They go to grad school, and so I decided I wanted to go to business school. Well, easier said than done. This was probably the first time that I explicitly started making the decision to do things my own way and making that trade-off. When you're writing admissions essays to get into school, usually the objective is to get in, and the best way to achieve that objective is to craft essays with the principle of what can I say here that gives me the absolute best chance of getting in and stays under 99% BS. However, the way I approached it was, what can I say that feels like 99% the truth, and then also hopefully helps me get in. And I understood at the time that this was probably not a winning strategy, but it's what felt right for me. I had spent a lot of years hiding the truth about my grades, about my drinking, about kind of everything in my life, and I knew I didn't want to do that anymore, and so even though it was going to be harder for me, I wanted to only say things in these essays and in the interviews that I felt were really accurate and reflective of me. And so, was it harder? I applied to 5 business schools at first, and I got 4 rejections and 1 wait list. And so I said I need to go back and make my chances better. And so I applied to 3 more schools, and I got 3 more rejections. And over the course of the process, you have these interviews when you're applying, and obviously they didn't go super well. But I remember my interview at Wharton because it was just very different than all the others. And it wasn't different because I gave different answers. It was the same answers. But for some reason that day, kind of everything I said just clicked. And I remember talking to the interviewer, and I told her, I had dropped out of school, but I pulled my life together and came back, and she was like, oh, that's such a great story. Like, I have a friend who did something similar. And then she was like, well, what do you do for outside of work? And I said, well, I tutor at this middle school occasionally. She's like, oh my gosh, tutoring. Like, I'm so passionate about tutoring. She's like, well, what else do you do outside of work? And I was like, I have a motorcycle that I ride sometimes. She's like, oh my gosh, like, I love motorcycles. And I ride on my uncle's all the time. And I was like, what's happening here? And I think, that interview, really was the key to me getting into school. And the day I found out that I got in, I was extremely excited for 2 reasons. One, it felt like I somewhat had my life back on track after a fairly rocky start to adulthood. And 2, because I had gotten in by doing things my way and staying true to who I was, even though it was harder. And because I did it my way, I really think it helped me find the school that was the right fit and had the right community for me. And while I thrived in business school because I did find that community, I didn't exactly figure out my calling like I had planned. And coming out of school, I once again was thrown into this job search and had similar problems as I did when applying to business school. I didn't want to embellish anything too much in these interviews. But a few years out, I landed a job with a mortgage due diligence company. And this company would end up becoming the market leader in that space. So from their success, it's clear that they were doing a lot of things correctly. There was growth, there was a lot of opportunity at the company, and yet I did not do super well there. If you asked them, they would probably say that I was a very mediocre or very average employee. And between the job searching and that experience, I really started to question myself and my skills, and honestly, it was like a pretty painful time. And I'd always felt like I had more to offer, but at some point, you gotta take a look at the evidence. And 3 years post-business school, the evidence was pointing to me just not being a very good employee. And after working there for a couple of years, I said, okay, I'm going to give it one more shot. I quit my job. I moved out to San Francisco. I crashed on a friend's couch for 3 months, and I started looking for jobs in tech. And throughout this 3-month search, I had countless coffee chats and job interviews and did all this networking. And I got fairly close to landing a job offer with a couple of companies, but for some reason, like, nothing. No 3 months, 0 offers. And finally, I interviewed at Earnest. And once again, in my Earnest interview, similar to my business school interview, I didn't have answers that were any different from the 60 plus interviews I had done previously. But for some reason, they just worked that day. And I remember having a conversation with Lewis, who was one of the founders, shown here, and he said, well, we have an opening on our risk team, and I think you'd be a great fit. And despite knowing nothing about risk and having no clue what this job even entailed, I had had such a good interview experience and enjoyed all the people that I had met. I took the job, and when I got going, it was clear that Lewis had been correct. it was a great fit. You know, I was now surrounded by people that pushed me and inspired me to do my best work, make me do more and do better. People that worked really hard for a cause beyond just making money also important, uh, and did so while having fun and not taking themselves too seriously. And so, you know, this was the community that I really needed to be in. You know, I had never worked in a place where I felt more energized to help our customers, more empowered to make an impact, and it enabled me to perform at my best, and ultimately that helped me get to this stage today. And so you can see kind of what a difference finding the right community can make. I went from this kind of average to below average performer at a very successful company to performing well enough that I could become the CEO in a very short time. So, kind of my advice for anyone who doesn't feel like they're thriving in their career is that it can be better. You know, you can be better. Take a chance and find the place where the community feels right, where the people motivate you to be the best version of yourself, and where you can work on solving big problems because it can lead to amazing things. Now, I want to switch gears here a little bit and talk about a new challenge to finding community in your career, and that is remote work. You know, Earnest is one of the many companies that decided to go fully remote at the beginning of the pandemic, and we ended our office lease in downtown San Francisco, and in fact, today our only real office is a few blocks from here, just down on Main Street. It's just a little too nice to give up yet. And when we announced we would switch to permanently remote, the early returns from employees were great. You know, we do an employee net promoter score every quarter, and when we made the decision to go remote, we scored the highest we ever had, despite being in these like unprecedented, terrible times. And I think it's easy to see why remote work is really popular with both employees and some employers. I know it's a little bit more complicated on the employer side, but for employers, they get to expand their hiring pool, which makes it easier to bring on great talent, build diverse teams. They get to save money on offices, and employees, they get a lot of flexibility to spend time with their families, with their pets, or whoever else they want. They can live in locations that better align with their with the lifestyle they want. Our chief growth officer, who's here in the audience, decided he wanted to be a mountain man, and so he just picked up and moved to Montana. And so it's clear remote work has a lot of tangible benefits, but we saw something interesting at Earnest. After that initial bump in our score, every quarter after that, it would go down. And each time we'd run this survey, we'd hear variations of, remote work is so great, I love the flexibility, I will never go back, and also I'm extremely burnt out, and I'm a little bit depressed, and I cannot figure out why. And now there are definitely a lot of factors that contribute to this collective sense of burnout. Just last week, a U.S. health panel recommended that everyone between 19 and 64 get screened for anxiety. Many people were just replacing their commute times with more work time, and we had all certainly been through some amount of trauma from our experience over the last 2 years. But I think one of the most underappreciated reasons for burnout is usually underlooked, and that is the loss of community that began during COVID and that continues on with remote work. For me, that certainly was the case. At the end of last year, I did a year in review exercise where I took stock of the things that were going well and that were not going well. And I highly recommend this exercise, by the way. My main takeaway was that while there was lots of things going well, something was missing. I felt just really blah. It's a technical medical term. And after pondering it, I realized that I was missing people. I was missing my work community. Even though we had quickly figured out how to transition our work from being in the office to being remote, we had not figured out kind of at all how to effectively build and sustain community remotely. We used to be able to build at least this base level of community just from coming into the office. Like you see people there, you're kind of forced to say hello, and kind of overnight that was gone. And so we've spent more than 2 years trying to figure out how best to replace that sense of community. And we've tried a lot of things. We've tried, better onboarding. We've tried video happy hours and virtual escape rooms and Zoom yoga where you can never figure out where to point the camera. And we've tried randomly assigned one-on-one coffee chats. And as a side note, I found out that people really love when the CEO drops a meeting on their calendar at the last minute with no agenda. So you can try that out. And while many of these things were fun, they weren't really fulfilling. And at the end of the day, they all felt like just more meetings. They definitely weren't solving our problem. And so after experimenting for the last 2 years, I am now of the belief that there is just no replacement for in-person connection as a way to build community. We held a full company offsite in person just a few weeks ago, and I would say my theory has been resoundingly confirmed. It was, I think, a truly transformative experience for our company. Going in, I didn't know that it was going to be the 1 a.m. group rendition of Backstreet Boys classics that was going to be the one thing that would really move the needle here, but it turns out that it was. It's a pro tip. But really, our people reconnected on an emotional level that really isn't possible over Zoom. And everyone I talked with at the event was just kind of joyful in a way that I hadn't seen in a long time. And that includes introverts, extroverts, longtime Earnest employees, and new hires. And this is not a pitch to go back to the office. Since March of 2020, I have learned to never say never, but I cannot foresee a future where we, reverse our decision to go remote. It's the best thing for our company. I think it's the best thing for our employees. But that being said, I believe in-person connection and community building is extremely important to our success. And it's part of feeling fulfilled at work. And that belief grows stronger, really every day. And I think hopefully there comes a time when we have really great collaboration tools that are able to replace some of what we lose by being remote. But until then, it's really our job as leaders to ensure we're figuring out how to build community. So I think if you work remotely, I would suggest you look for opportunities to meet up with colleagues. If you live near an office, I'd encourage you to go in occasionally and spend time with others. If you don't work remotely, take advantage of that, spend time getting to know people. And if you don't work remotely, but you would like to try out working remotely, we are hiring, so please visit us. And so now I want to return to this idea of doing things your own way, because that really applies to not only to me, but to our customers as well. And I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, our mission is to make higher education accessible and affordable. And today we do that in 3 ways. We help students maximize their financial aid and scholarships with our Going Merry platform. We help those students who need student loans to make smart and informed borrowing decisions. And we help graduates pay back their loans faster at lower interest rates through refinancing. And while that's what we do today, we're taking a very broad approach to make progress towards our mission. We want to help students and families make better financial decisions before school, while they're in school, and after school. And one of the things we struggle with sometimes is how to help students make these good decisions while also not minimizing the importance of the intangible benefits of higher education. Those would be belonging to and building community. Just because finances are involved doesn't mean the entire experience should be a transaction. I've touched a bit on this today, but community plays such an important role in all of our lives. I don't choose to live in the Bay Area because I really love high taxes and walking around in forest fire smoke for at least a month every year. I choose to live there because of the community we've built. My wife and I have an incredible group of friends that we made during business school. And when I think about moving somewhere else, that's always the reason that I don't want to go. I don't want to make new friends, and in fact, I don't even know how to make new friends. So if anybody has that answer, please let me know. And when we look back on our personal school experiences, kind of in whatever form that may be, I think we rarely recall every class we were in, and how did we learn to build this specific model. I always think about the people I met and how grateful I am for them. I think about the community that I'm now a part of. So Earnest and companies with an interest in helping solve the student loan problem can't just approach it from a dollars and cents point of view. We shouldn't tell every student to just find the best computer science course at the best public university that they can get into. That is a very good solution. And we shouldn't tell every student to just take classes online because it's cheaper than actually going in person. We need to support them to do it in their own way, the way that feels right for them, and where they have the best chance of finding and building community. And we need to help them in a way that sets them up for success upon graduation. So that's really our challenge and our goal at Earnest. And I don't want to pretend like that's easy, but at Earnest we're not in this to do easy. Remember the whole passion for challenges thing. But a big part of that challenge is tied to our mission to make higher education affordable and accessible for everyone. So far today I've mostly referred to our customers as students and parents of students. And while this group is a large part of our focus right now, ultimately we want to help all those seeking higher education, not just those that follow this traditional path. Today, well under half of college students fit the so-called traditional path, that is 18 to 22-year-olds, financially dependent on parents, going to school full-time. 47% of students in colleges and universities are over the age of 25. This is a group commonly referred to as adult learners. And roughly 60% of respondents in a recent USA Today poll agreed that earning a college degree is too time-consuming and expensive for working adults. Furthermore, about 2/3 of Americans surveyed said that colleges are stuck in the past and aren't meeting the needs of today's students. If you add all of these together, you can start to see why many students are struggling to find the right programs or finance options, and why higher ed as a whole is actually being challenged. Students simply don't see their needs being addressed. They want a degree, but they don't know how to do it their own way and make it work. And I relate to this, and I think we all know people who would be more successful if they saw a path forward. I want to clarify that our approach at Earnest is not to sell anybody on the value of higher education. It's just to make sure that the people who want a degree and can benefit from it have what they need to succeed. Today, only 35% of American adults are college degree holders. And to illustrate this number, 35% of American adults also carry medical debt, have at least one tattoo, regularly vote in elections, have never checked their credit score, get fewer than 7 hours of sleep per night, and claim loud chewing is their partner's most irritating habit. I'm not going to say whether I fall into that last one or not, in case my wife ever sees this. And trying to find a way to help 35% of adults find their community in higher education obviously cannot be a one-size-fits-all solution. We need to take into account all the various paths, experiences, and choices that lead people to enroll in school, as well as the reasons that people actually don't graduate. Today, as many as 33% of undergrads don't complete their degree program, and of those who do drop out, 24% of them end up defaulting on their loans. They're clearly not being set up for success. And guess what plays a big part in whether or not somebody graduates? If you said ethos or growth or future, you probably wandered into the wrong talk. But if you said community, you would be correct. In the study we conducted at Earnest, we found that sense of belonging was one of the biggest differences between students who graduated and those who dropped out of school. And feeling like they didn't belong was the third most common reason that individuals ended up dropping out. It simply cannot be overstated. Community is important. So at Earnest, our aim is to have degree seekers who are empowered to find the community that best fits them, who have clarity about their educational goals, who have an understanding of the degree they are seeking, and who are proactive about their financial choices. Now, if you're keeping score today, you may have noticed we have a lot of challenges to solve. We're working on a $1.7 trillion problem that may be getting smaller soon or maybe not, that has only gotten worse over the last few years despite many attempts to improve it. We need to help customers from many different backgrounds, motivations, and various levels of financial education make complex financial decisions, and we need to help them make those financial decisions while also not steering them away from these other intangible benefits like finding the best community. I didn't even touch on all of the other big issues that are coming up in education finance today, and there's also this idea of trying to build community in this remote first world. So working at Earnest is not for the faint of heart, but one of the ways we are maximizing our chances for success, and that I think all companies can maximize their chances for success, is by getting very clear about what the community we want to build at Earnest actually is. As I spoke about at the beginning of this talk, which probably seems like hours ago at this point, I had to find my own way of doing things, even if they were harder, because that's how I knew I would have an outsized success. And we really embrace that philosophy at Earnest. We look to do things the Earnest way, and the Earnest way is doing the hard things because we know that they're right, and we know that they'll make us successful. These are our company values. You might be asking why the PhD one has a picture of a sneaker, and that's because our designers clearly knew their stakeholder. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but as a couple examples, earn happy customers. We know that always doing what's in the best interest of our customers sometimes puts us at a disadvantage, but we're going to do it anyway. And impact is a team sport. We know that success will require each of us to do what's best for the team, even when it's not fun, like giving feedback to each other, but we do it anyway. That's the community we're building at Earnest, and that's the community that's focused on making affordable higher education a reality. If you like big challenges and contributing to the answers that don't exist yet, I would say please check us out. And lastly, I'll close out here. You may have heard something along the lines of you need to repeat something 5 to 7 times for it to stick. Well, I think I've said the word community about 35 times today, and maybe now 36. So likely at least you'll hear the word community in your dreams tonight. But hopefully you also understand how important community is in almost everything we do, in our education, in our careers, in our companies, and in our lives outside of work. And I hope that you will strive to factor in community as a tool to make better decisions in your life, in your business, and in your careers. Or if you're like me and you just don't want to feel blah anymore, remember that getting your community right is a great place to start. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for that great talk on community.